All right, it's super cold out here today, as you can see. I'm on my way to interview a pastor right now, and we're going to interview him about his book, God's Relationship with Black People. And we're going to see, what does God have to say about what's going on? All right, y'all, we just made it. First of all, y'all see that black-owned business over there, right there? See, it says open. That's good. In the middle of a snowstorm and snow blizzard, they're still open. Let's go in here and make it happen.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Really preparing for him the entire time, and this is going to be an interesting interview. How you doing?
All right. How you doing?
Good. Good morning. Good morning.
Come on in.
Really interesting interview, and he's also the author of the book, Biblically. Can you talk about the book?
Biblically Black and Blessed, what the Bible says about God's relationship with black people. And the whole purpose of this book is to bring it to the knowledge of black people, our relationship with God, the length of our relationship with God, and how God has viewed us versus the Jews or anyone else. But it's an awesome book, and the Lord really used me to write this. I think if you grab this book, it'll help you, it'll motivate you, it'll encourage you. And so I'm really just glad to have the opportunity to be here with Mr. Jackson here and just have an opportunity to talk about the book.
So first and foremost, why did you even decide to write this book right now? Why is this important?
It's important because when we know who we are, and we know the heritage and our history, I think that motivates us to success. And let me give you an example. If you consider Prince Andrew and Prince Harry and Prince Charles, there are certain things that they don't do or they won't do because they know they are royalty, right? I think a lot of the answers to a lot of our questions and the solutions to a lot of our problems is actually alerting and letting our people know who they are relative to everybody else, but more specifically because it seems like most of the black people, we grew up as Christians. Regardless of where we are now, we grew up as Christians. We grew up with a Bible in the house. I wanted to be able to take the Bible to show the relevance of black people, to show the relationship that God has with black people. Because really, as a pastor, one of the main questions I get is, where are the black people in the Bible? And I think as pastors, we need to be able to answer that question. We need to be prepared to answer that question. And we need to have a sufficient biblical. And if you read the book, you see I also called on some of the scientists and pulled up some of the scientific things that were stated. But we need to be able to answer that question. So that's one of the reasons. The other reasons is that I've been teaching this every February at our church for the last 5 or 6 years. And last year, I got a call out to Northern Illinois University, one of the black groups out there, to come out and do a portion of it there. And I did, and they kept me a large part of the night asking questions afterwards. And the one question that seemed to come up at the end of everything, where's the book? Right. Where's your book? Where's your book? And so the church pushed me to do a book after that, and so I did it.
So that's very interesting. You said you were getting a lot of questions from a lot of people, and why do you believe that black people? You talk about it in the book. You said that black people across the entire planet, across the entire world, are the most spiritual people of all people. And when I put a lot of posts on my page, but for some reason, when I talked about interviewing you about God's relationship with black people, I had over 20 different comments. Like, what do you think it triggers this type of response?
Okay, my background was a global technology manager. I manage engineers in about 15 countries, and we were on 5 of the 7 continents, and we were all over. And I mentioned that in the book that I got a chance to observe black people in Nigeria, black people in Morocco, black people in Brazil, even black people in Finland, Helsinki, that people that have relocated there. I got a chance to actually see black people all over, and black people are. The one thing, and I know it's an unscientific experiment, but I found them to be the most spiritually aware. And the one thing I try to do with this book is show that spiritual awareness is a result of the long history that black people had with God. And I take it from the very beginning, right? From when God created Adam. And when we bring it up in this book from the very beginning. But black people have a very long history and a very long, lengthy relationship with God. And because of that, I think we're created with a spiritual awareness. We come into this world with the spiritual awareness, and I'll clarify that later. I'm sure there'll be questions on that. But we come into this world with a spiritual awareness like no other. Because of that relationship that we've had with God down through the years.
Yeah. So that's very important. So we're talking about the spiritual awareness, and you got people all across the world that have this. Now, however, all across the world, there's a lot of different political views, a lot of different cultures and tribes. So my question is, is God a Republican or a Democrat?
Is God a Republican or a Democrat? I think we get. I know where that question is coming from, right? Because in our country, we have a Christian conservative movement that say they're Christians, right? They're a Christian conservative movement. But God is neither a Republican or Democrat. I will give you the pastoral answer. God is a spirit, right? And he's the creator of all beings, right? And so God's not concerned with your political affiliation. He's concerned with us actually living the life according to him. And I give a good, you mentioned now, all across the world, there are different political persuasions. I found out that even when I interfaced with black people that were from Morocco or from Egypt, they were Muslims.
Yeah.
But they were spiritual. We could be in a meeting, and when it was prayer time, it was time to stop the meeting for them, and they would go to a specific corner facing a specific way, a direction, and make their prayers. They were spiritual people. Now, some would say that, well, maybe that clashes with Christianity. And I go through lengths in the book also to state that the indigenous Africans and the black people always served the true and living God. We've always served the true and living God. And so there are different political persuasions, there are different people, there are different things, but God is a God that looks at us on the innards, right? And he looks at our heart, and he looks at our motives and our intentions, and it's that God works with. So there's a connection spiritually to God and with God. It appeared to me by just my observation that there is a connection to and with God by black people worldwide. I mean, and it's profound.
So now with that connection, we also draw a lot of conflict because, like you mentioned, you mentioned Muslims, we mentioned Christianity. So there's a lot of religious gangbanging that's going on. What do you feel is a two-part question, is a way to kind of, how do we overcome the religious gangbanging? Meaning, really the Hebrew, you got the Hebrews battling with the Muslims and Muslims battling with the Christians. One, how do we overcome that those conflicts? And then two, what do you feel like? Let's just answer that one first, and then we'll go to the
okay. How do we overcome those conflicts? And we overcome those conflicts by going back to God, right? Now there are the Hebrews, or what we call what's called the Black Hebrews. There are the Muslims, and then there are the Christians. Now, Christianity has a bad name amongst a lot of black people as it become knowledgeable, because Christianity has been hijacked, or has been attempted to be hijacked, right, by those for personal motive, for personal gain. But I, as a Christian, I cannot let the hijacking or the attempted hijacking of Christianity by those who want to do it for personal gain, I cannot let that negate or diminish my commitment to true Christianity and true Christianity and true Christ. So as a Christian, I look at this and say, this is the way to God. Jesus is the way to God, right? What I found out is that and I haven't done, I've done study on the Muslims, I've done study on the Black Hebrew, and I'll say that the Black Hebrew, we can talk about that as far as historically, where as a Christians I have differences with them. But here's the thing: if we have differences, and I think in all of them, whether it's the African Hebrew, whether it's the Muslim, or whether it's the Christian, we all look toward God. I think that the difference is, as a Christian, I'm saying that Jesus is the Son and He's the way. And I think I'm not sure about the Black Hebrew, but I think they do too, but they call him Yeshua instead of Jesus. So and the Muslims though, I understand that they're not. They're looking to Muhammad as the way. And now I can have a disagreement on Muhammad, but now if you call Jesus Yeshua, I don't have a disagreement with that. We're talking about the same thing. But I still think in sincerity, if you are sincerely seeking God, God will give you the right way. Now here's the what I find to be a major reasons of a major point and reasons why we are so divided, because it is profitable to other people if we remain divided. And so we can, as long as we let outside people actually impact us, we'll remain divided. But if I sit down with my Muslim brother and say, or my Muslim and say, look, I believe that Jesus is the way, and this is why, and if we could talk, I think we could come to some resolution. But I think there are those who benefit from keeping us separated. Yeah. And if they keep us separated and keep us occupied fighting each other, we can't come together and actually accomplish what we need to do overall as a people.
So that's really interesting. So you mentioned earlier, we talked about even with Jesus. What do you feel biblically? And I'm pretty sure you break this down in your book. What do you feel like is God's plan specifically for Black people? Like, because you talked about not being influenced by other communities. Mm-hmm. So what is the specific plan biblically for Black people right now?
What's the specific plan? And I think that plan hasn't changed historically. From the very first time that God created the Black man and placed him and the woman in the garden, right? And we see that we did not really have nations until after Noah, right? And Noah came. And the Black people were descended from Ham. And the indigenous Black people, Africans, we descended from Ham. We descended from Ham. God then, and I have to answer that question comprehensively, right?
Okay.
Is that,
let's break it down. Make it plain, Pastor. Make it plain.
One of the reasons that we get conflicted in this area is because we read the Bible as if there's just two genealogical links back to Adam. And we say Jews and Gentiles. In actuality, Noah had 3 sons. And according to the Bible, these 3 sons overspread the earth after the flood. So if that's the case, then there are 3 links back to Noah, and then from Noah to Adam. And those links would be Ham, the father of the Africans and the indigenous Black people and those that descended from them. There would be Shem, the father of the Jewish and those people that descended from those. And we see in the 11th chapter of Genesis that Abraham was in that link. And then there would be Japheth, the father of the Gentiles or the Gentile nations or the Caucasoids or the Caucasians as we know it, right? Right. And so if there are three links back to them, then my purpose then, I see that as God then, he gave, and let me say this first. Of those three links, of those three nations, I'll call them, because that's what I call them in the book, only one of those nations was not in fellowship with God, and that was the Gentiles. And the Apostle Paul made that clear. He said the Gentiles sacrifice things unto devils. He said when the Gentiles who without the law.
Who are the Gentiles?
The Gentiles are the Caucasians. They are the people that descends from Japheth, and they are the Caucasian nations. And according to the Bible, as we read the Bible, that is the only group that's not in relationship with God.
Now, you said the Gentiles are the Caucasians. Now, that's not the traditional thought that's being taught.
Well, but that's not the traditional thought. But if you see, and this is another thing, we had the Bible right there before us, and if we go to Genesis, the 10th chapter, maybe like the 6th verse, and these are the offsprings of Japheth, and it calls them out, and then it says, by these are the isles of the Gentiles separated. So the Bible tells us that from Japheth, the Gentiles proceed. They came from them. So black people, we're not Gentiles. And we're not Gentiles. And I think that's been part of the problem is that we've seen the Bible as Jews and Gentiles. And we said Jews were God's people and Gentiles were out of relationship with God, which is true. But whenever the Jews got in trouble, God sent them to Africa, whether it was Abraham that he sent to Africa, or whether it was Joseph who eventually brought Jacob to Africa, or whether it was Jesus who he went to Africa, or either whether it was Tahaka that came up from Africa to actually save Israel when Sennacherib and Assyria was going to demolish them. Whenever Israel then got in dire need and dire straits and in dire trouble, God sent them to Africa. And so when I see that then, first of all, I know that God has a relationship with the Africans because he trusted us enough to send Abraham when Abraham was in trouble, to send Isaac and Jacob when they were in trouble, and to send Jesus when Herod was after him, right? And so I see then by function that the African God we are protectors, we are nurturers. And being that we're very compassionate people, but he has the function that we have done throughout the Bible is to protect the priest or to protect Israel or protect God's righteousness in multiple ways.
My question. So if we're talking about the protection, what do you feel like that the black church can do to protect the community better?
The first thing we need to do is come together. Right, of unity. We can't accomplish anything in a splintered fashion. We can't accomplish anything in a splintered fashion. So what can we do? We need to. There's a lot of needs in the black community. So first thing is and that's what I tried to do with this book is start to educate black people on who they are. And who they are relative to God and relative to the Bible, but then the black church is and I would say it's one of the most consistent and the strongest vehicles in the black church. So we as people we can actually impact change, right? And so I'm going to keep going back to unity, come together, right? And the reason I keep going back to unity because if I go to Genesis and I see that Nimrod was building a tower, and he was building a tower about now that I know that there are Jews, Gentiles, and black people, not just Jews and Gentiles, and I know that Nimrod was Ham's descendant. I think it's his grandson or maybe great grandson. It's his descendant, and he's building a tower with black people. And they're building the tower to heaven. God did not rebuke him. He did not chastise him. He did not say anything evil about him. God said that Nimrod, these people are of one mind. And if they're one mind, they can accomplish anything. And I don't want them to build a tower to heaven. So let me go down and confuse them. The point is, God said that when these black people are unified, they can accomplish anything. So if we could come together, the church, and I don't care about your denomination. I don't care about, certain little things or things that. Now, there are some things that we as Christians that we have to hold to. Yes. But there are some things that we can disagree on and coexist.
Well, I want to challenge. First of all, I agree. I agree with you. And one thing that I've seen is a lot of times when you get a large group of black people together, and I'm telling you about experience. In Chicago, we've done movie screenings where we have movies like Hidden Colors, and we have black people who come out with the purpose of wanting to learn their history. Mm-hmm. But then when we come together, then we'll start seeing the gangbanging will slowly begin to seep in. And you'll see if we were all Muslim, a Muslim can never be a slave. And that's why everyone should be a Muslim. Or if we were all understood where Jesus' name really came from, and so now it's like the division begins to creep in, and mm-hmm. You spoke about that a little bit earlier, but can you talk a little bit more specific about the power of having an agenda, but also the power of when we come together, we have to recognize as a group, we're black first before mm-hmm. we're any religion.
We're black first. And I think that's the point. When you get to that point, what are you going to unify around?
Right.
And when you determine what it is that you're going to unify around and what that cause is, then it's just like a business plan. What's priority? What's important? What doesn't matter? What are we trying? And so some things that we are trying to accomplish.
You had a business plan. Business plan. Pay attention.
There may be some things that we may be trying to accomplish, that there may be some things that, I believe in a praise team instead of a choir. That's not important to them, right? Now, as I say, there are going to be some things that, as a Christian, there are some things that I cannot come together on. I mean, because it's my core belief. Jesus Christ is my way to God, right? Now you can call him Yeshua, but that's fine. But if you have someone else that's not, but if we need to accomplish things in the community, then we can work together and accomplish things in the community without going there. Without going there. If I'm trying to combat the gang problem, right. Or that, what does it matter when I hit the streets? What does it matter if you want to work with me and you say you pray to Muhammad and I could never agree with that prayer, mm-hmm. and I could never go along with that prayer because I pray to God and I go through Jesus. But if we want to fight the gang bangers on the street, right. And you say, hey, I'm in this to stop the gang banging and I'm in it too, then let's do it. Let's go together, because then in that point we can remove what we both out of the way, because the mission is mm-hmm. to now I'm still going to pray to Jesus, mm-hmm. because I believe he's going to empower me to do it. Right. But if you think that there's another way for you to do it, mm-hmm. and we're trying to do the same thing,
right?
Come on.
So speaking of that, as you talked about a business plan, the reason why I pointed that out, because business is very important. This is all about structure, right? And mm-hmm. getting things done. It's the reason why corporations run the world.
Yes.
So when we talk in business, the church, a lot of people, now one of the questions that I saw repeatedly about this interview is a lot of people wanted to know about the amount of money that the churches bring in. Mm-hmm. Why do you feel that, and I know you can only speak from your perspective, mm-hmm. why do you feel like many other black churches don't invest as much into the community and developing like an economic base within the community?
Okay, let me first say about myself, right? We are a small church that's growing. We have a technology school. If you go to our Facebook page, CITC-Chicago, or you go to our YouTube page, CITC Chicago, one word, with two C's in the middle, you will see that we are active and have been active for years in the community. And we've been taking people from ground zero. Some of these people were in gangs, some of them from ground, and bringing them to a place of certification in technology, and change. Their lives have been changed. Mm-hmm. Their lives have been impacted. Now, it's easy for people to jump on the church, to beat up the churches, because they may see one or two instances that they deem to be malfeasance in Christendom in the black church, right? I would guarantee you,
like Reverend, I'm not gonna say his name, but buying jets,
that billion-dollar jets. Exactly. Well, but I would say for every person that you see flying the billion-dollar jet, every pastor, there are probably 20 or 30 pastors I could point out to you in Chicago that are feeding hungry people every week, that are helping people stay in their houses, pay their bill. But because we are a culture that worships stardom, these pastors, they're not getting the press time, and they're not getting, so we like to see the flashy things, because that gives them something to talk about.
Did you see the one pastor that came down from the Raptors and swung down into the congregation?
Yes, I saw that. He was in Memphis. As a matter of fact, I actually have a cousin that goes to the church. But now see,
I'm not saying good or bad.
Let's know the whole story. He clarified that they were they were getting ready to have their Christmas program. So they have sponsors. This is a large church. This church, Brown Temple down in Memphis, it's probably somewhere along the size of TD Jakes, or pushing that level. It's huge, right? And so they were getting ready to have their Christmas play, and they have sponsors, automobile dealerships and all that. And those sponsors actually pay, and they put up, things for the angels to fly in. So he decided to use that on a Sunday, and the whole world went crazy for no reason whatsoever. I don't think it was no reason. Would I do it? No. Is there anything wrong with what he did? No. He wanted to emphasize a point of being caught up, and us, we believe in the rapture. We want to emphasize a point of being caught up. But for every pastor that misuses a dollar that comes in, I could probably show you 20 to 25 that are taking their money to help people. They're taking their money to do things. We run that school over there, and we've helped hundreds of people actually get out of unemployment, off of welfare, into jobs that pay $60,000, $70,000 a year. These people are all over America, from California to Texas to New York, working as IT technicians and IT analysts all over. We do that, and I know other pastors that are doing things. So a lot of times we focus on one or two that we deem to be actually malfeasance, I should say, to use best word. I don't want to go as last. Sometimes at church I say different things about people like that, right? But in this instance, it angers me, because when you have a high-profile person do that, it makes it harder for me to go out there and tell people that Jesus Christ is the way, and the Lord wants to help you, and God wants your life, give your heart to Christ, and they always pull up those people.
Yeah. So why do you believe that when I look at, let's say, the black community and divorce is the white community, most of the white communities, they're led by a lot of business figures, the corporations, versus in the black community, our leaders are the pastors. Why do you think we don't have as much business as a domination? And I specifically mean like what's going on with these Republicans, and I mean with the politicians. We see immediately if the black politicians want to get the black vote, they first go to the churches instead of going to the business owners, because the business owners don't have that influence.